"Call me immediately." That was the text. No greeting, no context, just those 3 words glowing cold on my screen as I reached for my coat. I was headed to dinner at Claire's. She'd called days earlier. "Just the 2 of us, Mom. We need to talk." I thought she missed me. I thought I was being included. Instead, I sat down on the hallway bench and called Richard. He answered on the first ring. No small talk. "She filed a petition this morning," he said. "Claire wants legal control. She's claiming you're mentally incompetent." My coat slipped from my hands. "She submitted statements, witness affidavits. She's going after the company." I couldn't speak. She had planned this, not out of concern, but ambition, and she was coming for everything. She's filed for emergency, conservatorship. Richard said she's claiming you're already compromised. The words dropped like a match on dry wood. Claire wasn't just challenging me, she was trying to erase me. I sat still, breath shallow as it hit. The dinner invite, the soft voice, the "let's talk about the future." It was a setup. She'd planned every move behind my back, with my name still on the door. I gave her everything. Now she wanted the rest. Not later, not gradually, now fast, quiet, permanent. And what Claire never bothered to ask, what she never saw coming: I'm not done. If she wanted a war, she just got one. 3 days earlier, Claire had called me like nothing was wrong. "Mom," she said sweetly, "you've been working too hard. Come to dinner. Let's talk about the future." She'd said the future like it was something we would dream up together, like I wasn't still showing up to the office 5 days a week, like I hadn't kept that company alive through 3 recessions, 5 mergers, and a pandemic she barely lived through on Zoom. But I didn't hear any of that then. I just heard my daughter's voice sounding warm for the first time in months. I told myself, maybe we'd turned a corner. Maybe she finally saw me again, not as some figurehead, but as her mother. I let that hope in. I even picked up dessert on the way. Lemon tarts from the bakery near her old elementary school. A detail I never stopped remembering, even if she had. That call had felt like a little patch sewn into something torn. But now I knew better. It wasn't a patch. It was a pressure point, and I'd walked right into it. I sat in my kitchen that night, replaying the conversation in my head. Her voice had been too calm, practiced. Now that I looked back, there had been no warmth in it, just careful words shaped to disarm me. We should talk about the future. What she meant was her future. Without me in the way, and I, the fool, had thanked her for inviting me. I made myself a cup of tea. I never drank. I just held it, letting the steam hit my face while the words from Richard echoed in my skull. Emergency conservatorship already filed. She's coming after everything. That was when the shift began. Not loud, not violent, just final. I realized I'd been imagining a daughter who no longer existed. The Claire I raised would have protected me. She would have fought for me. But the woman on the other end of that phone, she was something else now, something polished and cold. And I had to face that. I set the lemon tarts down on the counter and stared at them. They were never meant for me. Looking back, I can't believe how long I ignored the signs. Claire had been softening the ground for months, maybe longer. At first, it was little things, interrupting me in meetings, finishing my sentences like I couldn't keep up, rolling her eyes when I asked about marketing data or pressed too hard on projections. She used to take notes when I spoke. Lately, she just stared at her phone. And when I did challenge her, when I disagreed with her hiring plans or warned her about overpromising to investors, she'd laugh it off. "You're overthinking again, Mom." She always called me Mom in front of the staff, but not with affection, with ownership, like I was a relic she could afford to humiliate. I told myself it was generational, that this was how daughters proved independence now, by cutting through their mothers in front of others. But it wasn't just snide remarks or dismissive tones. She started slipping things into conversation. "Maybe it's time you took longer vacations." The team gets confused when you change direction mid-project. It might help morale if we put a fresh face at the helm. I thought she was venting. I thought we were still on the same side. But behind my back, she was whispering to staff that I was forgetful, erratic, getting slower. One of my assistants told me in confidence that Claire had been joking about me wandering off into early retirement. They all laughed. I guess I did too when I first heard it. That's how they get you. They erode you with humor. They dress disrespect up as concern, wrap cruelty in jokes, and I, so desperate to hold on to some version of closeness, let her. I kept showing up to meetings where I was no longer welcome, kept inviting her to dinner after long, bored, kept hoping we'd get back to the place where we worked as a team. But Claire didn't want a team. She wanted the throne. And when Richard said she'd filed that petition, when he told me she'd signed legal documents stating I was incompetent, it all snapped into place. The eye rolls, the backtalk, the calculated undermining, the quiet campaign to make me look unfit. She'd been preparing this for a long time. What Claire didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this, not out of paranoia, not even suspicion, but out of habit. I've run a business for over 3 decades. People lie, people fail, people crack when money or status is on the line. But numbers, records, paper trails, they don't. For years, I kept everything. I keep records. I always have. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I expect people to disappoint me eventually. It's just good business. Every board meeting, every executive change, every signed client contract, I kept it all. More importantly, I kept proof that I was still fit to lead, that I wasn't senile or sentimental or slipping. Medical evaluations, personal journals, letters. From longtime clients thanking me by name for their success. All filed, all dated, and tucked deep in my desk drawer, a folder labeled Succession Contingency. 2 versions, one with Claire, one without. I drafted it after the first time she joked about helping me transition into retirement. She'd said it with a smile, but her tone had the chill of finality. That was when I knew I had to be ready. Had also kept copies of the little things she never thought I noticed. Expense reports with names redacted. Emails where she contradicted me to staff. Meeting notes where she edited my decisions after the fact. Petty things on their own. But together, a pattern. I never went to that dinner. Instead, I drove straight to Richard's office. Same brick building, same second-floor corner unit he'd worked out of for 2 decades. I was there when he unlocked the door. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew better. Instead, he slid the petition across the desk, my name printed in bold under a heading I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Petition for adult conservatorship. Claire's signature sat on the bottom like a wound. "She's serious," he said. "She's stupid," I said. His lips twitched. Both can be true. He sat back in his chair, hands folded, eyes sharp. "She has investors behind her. 2 of them contacted me last week privately. They think she's the future of the company." "And I'm the past," I said flatly. "They're not saying that out loud," he replied. "But they're treating you like a sentimental liability, like you'll cling to old ideas and let emotion cloud judgment." That word again, emotion. "They don't know the numbers," I said. Richard leaned forward. "Then that's how we beat this. Not with speeches, not with tears, but with numbers, financials, records, your medical evaluations. Hard proof." I nodded. He flipped open a legal pad and started taking notes like we were preparing for a merger. "Step 1, he said. We file a motion to contest fast before she tries to freeze your access to company accounts. She won't be able to," I said. "Everything is in my name. She doesn't have voting control. She's hoping to get it by proving you're mentally unfit, and we prove I'm not." Richard smiled. Not warm, not friendly, but strategic. "She's underestimating you." "That's good." "She's counting on me to be quiet," I said. "That's over." I handed him a flash drive with copies of the contingency plan, financial records, and emails. Claire thought she deleted a PDF of the medical exam, signed 6 months ago. He plugged it in without a word, reviewed the contents, and nodded. "You've been waiting for this." "No," I said. "I was hoping it would never come." "But you're ready." Damn right I was, because now it wasn't about being right or respected. It was about taking back what was mine, piece by piece, line by line, signature by signature. By the time I left Richard's office, I had exactly what I needed: a reason, a direction, a mission. This wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't even about the company. Not entirely. It was about identity, about not letting the people closest to me rewrite who I was just because it suited their ambitions. Claire thought I was done. She said it without saying it. She moved against me like I was a problem to be quietly managed. But I wasn't some fragile widow who lost her grip on reality. I wasn't confused or clinging to power out of fear. I was lucid and furious. She had tried to remove me like a formality, file the petition, smile through dinner, inherit the crown, before I even stepped down from the throne. What she didn't expect was resistance. My goal was clear now. Prove I am fit legally, medically, and financially. Show the board who she really is. Expose the grab for what it is: greed wrapped in concern. Take her mask off publicly because she hadn't just insulted me. She tried to erase me, and she did it quietly, methodically, the way cowards always do. She wanted the applause for rescuing the company from its aging founder while pocketing every benefit of my life's work. She wanted the empire without the blood on her hands. But now there would be light, courtrooms, depositions, evidence, shareholders watching. I wasn't going to play this out in whispers. I was going to drag every lie into the daylight and let Claire burn in it. This wasn't revenge. This was self-preservation. I didn't tell anyone else what was happening yet. Not the staff, not the board, not my friends, not until I had every duck in a row. Let her think I was still stunned. Let her think I'd show up. To dinner confused and hurt. Let her keep underestimating me. It made my next move easier. But inside, I was already shifting from prey to planner, from mother to opponent. It came from the most unexpected place, a junior accountant named Mason. Quiet, polite, barely out of grad school. The kind of employee Claire never noticed unless she needed coffee or copies. He stopped me outside the elevator on Thursday afternoon, eyes low, voice almost a whisper. "Miss Walker, I think you should see something." My heart skipped. "You can speak freely." He handed me a folded printout. No explanation, no signature, just a quiet glance toward the stairwell and a quick exit, like he couldn't risk being seen talking to me. I waited until I got back to my office to read it, an internal email from Claire sent 2 weeks ago. Subject: Pre-transition support body. When the time comes, I expect full alignment. Bonuses will be distributed accordingly once I assume interim control. I read it twice. When the time comes, not if, when. And interim control, like she'd already penciled in my funeral and was prepping her press release. She'd sent it to 6 staff members, 3 department heads, 2 senior advisors, and Mason. She had been planning to buy their loyalty, and clearly not everyone was for sale. I read the email again and felt that familiar heat return. Not rage, precision, like the exact moment you find a crack in a dam. She was making promises, financial ones, transactional ones. There was nothing about concern for my well-being or love for the company in that email, just bonuses and control. If I could prove she was trying to leverage company funds to stage this takeover, even hint at it, she wouldn't just look ruthless. She'd look fraudulent, manipulative, unethical, and the board would listen. Mason had no idea what he'd just done. Or maybe he did. Maybe he saw what she was becoming and didn't want to be part of it. Either way, I had my first breadcrumb, and I wasn't letting go of the thread. I scanned the printout, emailed a copy to Richard, then slipped the original into my private file. She wanted loyalty, through bribery. I'd win through evidence, let her buy silence. I only needed one voice. I didn't flinch. I got to work. Claire wanted to paint me as unstable, emotional, outdated, the kind of woman who runs a company with sentiment instead of skill. So, I shut the door to my office, muted my phone, and did the one thing she never imagined I still could. I proved I was better than her. I opened the last 5 years of quarterly reports. I pulled profit margins, growth rates, and client acquisition data. I made copies of our 3 biggest expansion deals, all signed off under my direction. Claire had smiled at the ribbon cuttings. I had negotiated every clause. I created a file labeled Operations under CEO Tenure, then another for client retention statistics, and another for leadership performance reviews. Every report included source data, no fluff, no anecdotes, just math. Cold, hard proof that, under my leadership, this company hadn't just survived, it had thrived. She wanted to say I was sentimental. Then I'd hit her with efficiency ratios and double-digit client retention. I wasn't just fit, I was outperforming half the CEOs in my sector, including the young, flashy ones, investors love to throw money at before watching them burn out in 2 years. Claire didn't understand longevity. She mistook it for rust. That's what happens when you inherit proximity to power. You start to think it belongs to you. By nightfall, my office looked like a war room. Charts, reports, graphs with year-over-year data pinned in neat rows. No emotional appeals, no desperate attempts to be heard, just evidence. Cold, clean, factual. I even found a speech I gave at a leadership summit last year, the one where I spoke without notes for 40 minutes and got a standing ovation. Claire had said afterward, "It was nice, Mom, a little sentimental, but nice." I dug up the recording. I watched myself. I didn't see sentiment, I saw precision. By the end of that night, I had built a binder. I labeled it Exhibit A. It would be the first of many. She showed up the next morning, didn't call, didn't schedule, just walked into my office like it already belonged to her. "Mom," she said with that politician's smile, the one she practiced for board meetings and charity galas. "We should talk." I closed the binder on my desk without flinching. She took the seat across from me, not the one for guests, but the one I reserve for partners, equals. That told me everything. "I wanted to say this face to face," she began. "No lawyers, no dramatics. Too late for that. I know you're upset," she continued, voice calm, almost maternal. "But this doesn't have to get ugly." I didn't speak. She leaned in, all false warmth and fake empathy. "You've done an incredible job building this company, but at some point, we all have to let go. Before people start asking hard questions." There it was, the threat dressed up like concern. She folded, her hands delicately. "It'll be easier if you step aside voluntarily. There's no need to drag this into court or make it public. You're offering mercy," I said flatly. She smiled. "I'm offering dignity." I leaned back and studied her, the way her confidence sat on her like armor, the way she assumed this was a negotiation. "Not a mistake. You filed a legal petition behind my back," I said, voice steady. "You told the court I'm mentally unfit to lead." Her smile didn't waver. "That was a procedural formality." "And the bonuses you promised to staff?" That caught her. Just a flicker, barely visible, but it was there. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie. Not here. Not to me." Her mouth tightened just slightly. "I'm doing what's best for the company." "No," I said, rising from my chair. "You're doing what's best for your image. You want the story of the brilliant daughter who rescued her mother's legacy. You want control without earning it. You want the crown, Claire." She stood too, taller, still composed. "You won't win this," she said, voice quiet but sharp. "You're tired. You're slipping. People are already talking." "Let them," I replied. "I have the receipts, all of them." She left without another word. But I saw it, the shift in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't sure. And that uncertainty, That was the first crack in her campaign. She thought I'd be too rattled to fight, but the moment she walked out of my office, I opened a folder labeled Unread Transactions. I'd been keeping it for months, not because I was suspicious, but because Claire had been sloppy, and now I had reason to look closer. First, I pulled the financials, month-by-month breakdowns of executive reimbursements, expense allocations, and consulting contracts. One payment stood out: $12,000 labeled strategic advisory to a shell firm I'd never heard of. I looked it up, registered 3 months ago, single officer listed, a former colleague of Claire's from grad school, no services rendered, no reports submitted, another $8,500 to a marketing consultant, no invoice, no meeting notes, no deliverables. That consultant, I discovered, was currently traveling through Europe, posting on Instagram about chasing dreams with investor backing. She was funneling money bit by bit. Small enough not to draw alarms, large enough to stack. I went deeper. HR flagged a pattern of payroll adjustments tied to non-existent bonuses. Claire had slipped herself a quiet 10% increase in executive compensation under a title that didn't exist until she invented it. Then came the statements from staff. 3 of them emailed confidentially after Mason's quiet warning spread through the building. Claire had told them she'd make it worth their while if they backed her in the event of a shift in leadership. Some said they'd felt pressured. One called it a loyalty test. All of it documented. And now I had it. Not whispers, not speculation, receipts, bank statements, email chains, expense reports, and most damning of all, a memo she drafted on a shared drive but never sent. Leadership Transition Proposal Interim CEO Claire Walker, dated 3 days before she invited me to dinner. She'd already written her acceptance speech before the ambush even started. I packaged it all into a single folder, labeled it Claire, Financial Misconduct, and sent it to Richard with a short note. We're past rumors. Now we bury her in truth. Because this wasn't just about competence anymore. It was fraud, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from it clean. Richard called me the next morning. No greeting. "Dorothy," he said, "you need to sit down." I'm standing. Then brace yourself. He had pulled the corporate card statements I hadn't gotten. To yet, the legal expense allocations. Claire had slipped the invoices into general admin expenses, buried under vague line items. Turns out she wasn't just paying lawyers. She was using company money to finance her case against me. The legal fees she submitted as consulting were actually payments to the firm handling her conservatorship petition. She had built our company, my company, for the privilege of trying to declare me incompetent. "She's using your own profits to wipe you out," Richard said flatly. My breath caught. Not shock, not heartbreak. Something colder. I looked at the numbers. $2,400 in fees drawn in 4 separate transfers. All coded under legitimate business services. All approved by her. "I'll get you the originals," he added. "The bank can confirm." Where the money went? I was quiet for a long moment. Then she thought I'd never see it. "No," he said. "She thought you'd be gone before it mattered." That was the moment something inside me turned to steel. This wasn't about power anymore. This was theft, malicious, strategic, arrogant. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me to fund her victory. I hung up and walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot, the same lot I used to sit in. Years ago, watching Claire run to the car after ballet class, hair flying behind her. That little girl was long gone. She'd been replaced by someone who saw my company as a stepping stone and me as an obstacle, someone who didn't just stab. She smiled while twisting the knife. She used my own damn money. I turned back to my desk and grabbed the folder labeled Court Prep. I slipped in the bank statements, highlighted every payment, labeled each with dates, vendor names, and invoice mismatches. Then I opened a fresh document titled Petitioner's Financial Conflict of Interest. This wasn't just a defense anymore. This was a takedown, because now I wasn't fighting to prove I was still capable. Now, I was proving she wasn't. That night I didn't work. I sat in my living room with the lights off, a glass of whiskey in my hand, staring at the portrait over the fireplace. Henry, my husband, gone 10 years this fall. He used to say Claire had my fire. I think he meant it as a compliment. Maybe it was back then. She was tenacious, competitive, a little ruthless on the soccer field, but never cruel. She cried when she lost. She used to bring home awards and tell me, "I wanted to win for you." Now she was trying to erase me legally, financially, publicly. She didn't want to win for me anymore. She wanted to win instead of me. And I couldn't stop asking myself one thing. How did I raise someone who could do this? I had sacrificed so much to build her world. Stayed late at the office to pay for private school. Missed promotions early in my career to make room for sick days and science fairs. I gave her a seat at the table she didn't have to earn, just so she'd have a head start. And she used that head start to plan my funeral while I was still breathing. The fire she inherited wasn't a gift anymore. It was a weapon. And I helped. Sharpen it. That was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the legal fight, not the money. The truth that I had spent years choosing grace over confrontation, peace over power, silence over anger, and it had turned me into prey. I had taught her how to walk through doors I kicked open. And now she thought she could shut them on me. I took another sip of whiskey, felt it burn straight through the numbness. The woman I used to be, the nurturing one, the one who tried to lead with heart, she died in that chair right there with Henry's face staring down from the wall. I wasn't sad, not anymore. I was stripped clean, and what was left was someone Claire hadn't met yet. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls, one to Richard, one to the courthouse, and one to the board secretary. The hearing date was set. Conservatorship petition versus Dorothy Walker, 2 weeks from today. I told Richard I didn't want it quiet. I wanted it public. I said, board members, senior staff, investors, I want every single one of them in that courtroom. You're sure? I'm done hiding. He didn't argue, just said, then we'll give her a show. I drafted the invitation myself, formal, brief, impossible to ignore. As you may be aware, a conservatorship petition has been filed challenging my ability to lead this company. In the interest of transparency and integrity, I invite you to attend the court hearing. The documents, evidence, and testimony presented will speak louder than rumor ever could. I welcome your presence. I sent it directly to the board, CC'd every department head. Claire's name was listed 3rd. By noon, my inbox buzzed with quiet. Replies, thank you for including us. I will be there. You have my support, not all of them. Not yet, but enough to matter. I could feel the shift, quiet at first, like the way air changes before a storm. Claire had wanted a whisper campaign, a slow erosion of trust. I gave her a stage instead, let her explain to a room full of shareholders why she accused her mother of incompetence. Let her try to cry her way out of forged invoices and company-funded lawsuits. She wanted control. Let's see how she handled scrutiny. I ordered binders, black leather, gold embossed with the company logo, each one filled with the same contents: growth metrics, medical documentation, audit trails, staff emails, one for every seat in the gallery. Let them flip through page after page while she spins her little narrative. Let them see exactly who's been building this company and who's been bleeding it dry. No more silence. No more dignity for the sake of appearances. If she wanted to throw me to the wolves, then I'd teach her what happens when the wolves find out I'm not the meal. I'm the fire. The courtroom smelled like cold air and polished wood. I wore black, not for mourning, but for focus, for message. Claire wore cream, classic, soft, safe. She was already seated with her lawyer when I walked in. I didn't look at her. Didn't need to. I could feel the tension. Richard leaned in beside me, 3 board members in the gallery, and your VP of operations just walked in. Good, I said. The judge entered. Gavel formalities. Then Claire's lawyer stood. What followed was exactly what I expected. A performance. Your Honor, the man began. This is not about animosity. It's about concern. My client, Claire Walker, has observed a steady decline in her mother's capacity to lead a complex organization. Emotional decision-making, inconsistent memory, erratic behavior during board discussions. He paused, as if it hurt to say. I sat still, letting the lies fill. The air. Miss Walker has expressed admiration for her mother's legacy, but legacy is not leadership. Claire took the stand next. She looked at the judge with big, controlled eyes, practicing vulnerability. I love my mother, she said softly. But she's not the same. She cries in meetings. She forgets key dates. She's made financial decisions, based on personal attachments, not company health. Lies, but told well. She looked toward the gallery, her eyes glassy. This has been the hardest decision of my life, she said. But I had to choose what was right for the company. For a moment, I watched heads nod, just a few. Then Richard stood. No dramatics, no monologue, just folders. Your Honor, he said, calmly, we'll be entering into evidence a complete record of Dorothy Walker's medical evaluations from the last 18 months, all cleared by 2 specialists. No signs of cognitive decline. He placed the first folder on the bench. Next, a full audit trail of executive decisions made under her direction, including 3 consecutive years of revenue growth, client retention, and market expansion. All benchmarked against industry trends. Another folder. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. And finally, he said, sliding over the last binder, evidence that the petitioner, Miss Claire Walker, utilized company funds to retain legal services for this case, services she submitted as corporate consulting in direct violation of her fiduciary duty. Silence, the kind that shifts an entire room. The judge flipped open the folder. Page after page of transfers, line items, digital signatures. Richard didn't look at Claire. He didn't have to. More evidence available upon request, he said, then sat down. Claire's lawyer fumbled, tried to object. The judge overruled, and I sat there, back straight, hands folded, because this wasn't about pride. It was about truth. And finally, everyone in that room was seeing it. The next 10 minutes weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Richard opened the binder labeled Exhibit C, flipping each page with the calm precision of a man who knew he was holding a sword, not paper. Here, he said, placing the first document on the screen for the judge, is the original invoice submitted by Miss Claire Walker for legal consulting coded under General Strategy. Click, and here is the same invoice paid directly to the law firm currently representing her in this case. Click. He didn't rush. He let each page sit long enough to sting. Here is the wire transfer and the matching charge to the corporate account. Click. Here is the vendor registration listing the firm under Ms. Walker's personal contact information. Click. Every line. Backed by dates, bank statements, IP login, and CLA's digital authorization. She wasn't just misusing funds. She was funding her attack with the company's own money. The judge leaned forward. In your expert opinion, Mr. Hastings, he said to Richard, does this represent a conflict of interest? More than that, Your Honor, Richard said smoothly. It represents fraud. No gasp, just stillness. Then he brought out the staff emails, the promises of bonuses, the pressure, the quiet loyalty tests. He projected one email onto the screen, the one Claire had sent late at night, thinking no one would ever show it to me. Once I'm officially in charge, you'll be compensated for your discretion. Support me, and we all move forward together. The board members in the gallery shifted. One crossed his arms, another shook his head. Claire's lawyer objected. This is out of context. Richard didn't blink. We can supply the full threads, All 16 of them. The judge turned to Claire. Did you offer incentives for staff support during this transition? Claire opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her confidence had been drained clean. She glanced at the gallery, faces she once thought were allies. No one smiled back. I didn't move, didn't smirk. I just watched the version of her she had spent months crafting. The poised successor, the gracious daughter, the visionary leader, melt away under the heat of hard fact. I didn't have to convince them anymore. The numbers were doing it for me. The judge turned the last page slowly. He didn't speak right away. Just stared at Claire for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he said it, the sentence that cracked her right down the center. So, Ms. Walker, let me be clear, he said, voice calm but cold. You accuse your mother of mental incompetence while using her company's money to finance the case against her. Claire froze. No rebuttal, no practice line. Just the sound of the question echoing back at her. She glanced at her attorney, who looked like he wanted to vanish. I didn't handle the billing directly. The judge cut her off. The documents say otherwise. You authorized the payments. You signed the expense reports. You wrote the emails. Claire blinked fast. It was necessary legal counsel for a personal petition, the judge said, raising his brow against the woman still legally in charge of the business. The silence was heavier than shouting. Behind me, someone shifted in their seat. I didn't have to look to know it was one of the board members, the same ones who had been swayed by her charm, her youth, her perfect messaging. Now they were watching. Her crack. The judge leaned back in his chair. Your mother's cognitive evaluations are clean. Her leadership record is solid. Her documentation is thorough. And the only evidence we've seen of misconduct today, he said, flipping the binder shut, is yours. Claire's shoulders dropped. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look small, like the illusion had finally run out of oxygen. Richard didn't move. He didn't need to. The damage was done, quiet, surgical. The judge cleared his throat and looked to the clerk. We'll take a brief recess before I issue my ruling. He stood. So did Claire. But it didn't matter anymore. The shift had already happened. This wasn't my defense. It was my confirmation. Claire didn't just lose control of the company, she lost control of the story. We came back from recess to a different room. Same courtroom, same wood paneling, but the air had changed. Heavier. Final. Claire sat stiff in her chair, eyes locked forward. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She didn't respond. The board members had moved closer. More of them. 2 I hadn't seen before the break. Word had spread. The judge didn't waste time. He looked over the bench and said calmly, "This petition lacks merit. The evidence provided by the respondent is clear, verified, and in direct contradiction to the claims made by the petitioner." His eyes moved to Claire. In addition, there is now sufficient basis to open a formal review into financial misconduct on the part of Ms. Walker. No yelling, no gavel slam, just reality. Claire's mouth opened. Your Honor, I've heard enough. And just like that, the petition was dismissed. It was over. But Claire wasn't done. As the courtroom began to clear, she stood desperate now. No script left. She turned to the gallery, voice cracking. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she said, almost pleading. I thought I was protecting the company. No one answered. Not one. Face offered her comfort. She stepped toward the bench, toward the judge. I thought he didn't look up. Her lawyer tugged at her arm, quietly urging her back. But she turned to me, and I will never forget what she said. I only wanted what was best for the company, Mom. I didn't want this to happen. I stood still. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or fear or grief. I felt clarity. You made sure it did, I said, and then I walked away. Behind me, she cried. Not quietly, not with grace, The kind of crying that belongs to someone who's just realized the mask won't work anymore. She had spent months playing the part, the composed daughter, the visionary leader, the misunderstood hero. Now, in front of every person who mattered, that image lay in pieces at her feet. And I didn't lift a finger. The truth did all the work. The fallout came fast. By the time I got home that afternoon, Richard had already texted, "Bard called an emergency session tonight." I didn't ask for it. I didn't have to. Claire had made herself the issue. That evening, I sat at the head of the conference table, the same chair I'd occupied for over 2 decades. It had never felt more earned. Claire arrived last. No makeup, no allies, just silence. The board chair cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the court's decision and the supporting documentation." His voice was steady but clipped. "Claire, your actions were reckless, unethical, and in violation of several clauses in our executive agreement." She opened her mouth. He cut her off. "You'll be removed from all company duties, effective immediately. The Finance Committee will be forwarding your records to legal for formal review. If charges are recommended..." He paused, glanced at Richard. "We will cooperate fully." Claire's face collapsed. Not dramatically, just emptied, like she finally understood this wasn't going to fade. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. "No," I said. "You thought I'd roll over." She didn't look at me, not even then. The board voted unanimous. I signed the removal paperwork myself. Claire didn't touch it, just sat there blinking, like the room had changed shape. When it was over, the room didn't erupt. No relief, no applause, just the quiet click of power returning to the place it belonged. After everyone left, I stayed behind. The lights dimmed on a schedule. My shadow stretched across the table, long and sharp. For years, I built this place. With care. Every risk, every sleepless night, every gut instinct that turned out right, it was all mine. And she tried to take it with signatures and smiles. She underestimated me. They all did, but I was still standing, and she was finally being held accountable. 2 weeks later, I walked into the boardroom at 9 a.m. sharp. Every seat was filled. They stood when I entered. No pity, no discomfort, respect. I sat at the head of the table. No apology in my posture, no warmth in my tone. I'd learned I won't waste your time. I said this company is my legacy. It was not built on trends or personality or charm. It was built on discipline, strategy, and follow-through. No one moved. They were listening. I looked at them. All of them. The ones who doubted, the ones who watched, even the ones who stayed quiet when Claire whispered in the dark. From this day forward, I said, anyone who undermines that legacy will be dealt with accordingly, family or not. Silence still. But this time it didn't feel tense. It felt right. I could see it in their eyes. They finally understood who I really was. Not the woman they thought they could sideline gently. Not the mother figure they could flatter, then replace. I wasn't soft anymore. I was sharp. I didn't rebuild the company. I reclaimed it. After the meeting, no one dared linger. No more small talk. No more double meanings, just quiet reverence. As I walked down the hall, I passed Claire's old office, empty, stripped clean. I didn't stop because I wasn't looking back. Let her learn from the mess she made. Let the world watch how I cleaned it up. Let everyone remember I didn't just survive betrayal, I outlived it.